I've been married for 33 years. D-Day was just 3 days ago. Me, a 35-year-old man, and my wife Sandy, who's 55, have 2 kids and 2 grandkids who we adore. Here's a little background. We met at a nightclub back in the 80s. I was working as a bouncer and she came in with some friends. We went on a date and 2 months later, we moved in together. After 2 years, we got married. Life was good. Work, play, and raising a family. But my work shifted from an active role to a more desk-bound job, and I started packing on weight, to the point where I couldn't even finish having sex because of asthma attacks. To bring back the spark in the bedroom, we tried various things, but we always stayed faithful. I'd been cheated on before, so infidelity was a firm line in the sand that Sandy and I agreed not to cross. I believed we'd die old and gray together. After 33 years of marriage, my love for her grew every single year. After 2 decades of struggling in a dead bedroom, I decided to drop the extra pounds. 2 years later, I was 176 pounds lighter, thanks to a rigorous diet, exercise, and a tummy tuck. Some might call it vain, but I had 3 main reasons: seeing my grandkids grow up, prioritizing my health, and rekindling the intimacy with my wife. For the past 2 years, we'd been having sex 3 to 4 times a week. Sandy enjoyed every moment. Her body didn't lie. We were finally in a place where we could truly relish life together, and she claimed she was still in love with me. I loved her back deeply. I never strayed, and I was convinced she hadn't either, until 3 days ago. Sandy went on a vacation with her 2 sisters, traveling out of state. I trusted her completely, so there was no concern about her going. We had always been open with each other. Our phones had apps where we could see each other's locations, not due to a lack of trust, but simply for safety. Our messages and emails were accessible to both of us. When I shed the extra weight and started looking better, I caught more attention from women, but I brushed it off, being happily married. Sandy admitted she felt insecure because she'd put on some weight, but that never mattered to me. I loved her no matter what, and I told her so daily. After work one day, I was driving home when I got a call from Sandy. She was in tears and asked if my sister-in-law had spoken to me. I said no and asked why. What she said next shattered me. Sandy admitted that she had sex with another man. She said she was so sorry and didn't know what came over her. I was in shock and felt my heart shatter into a million pieces. I sat in my car, numb, while she continued talking. She said her sisters and she were having a few drinks, and a married couple joined them. They all drank until 2 a.m. Her sisters had already left to return to their room, leaving my wife alone with this couple. When the bar closed, she told me she was very drunk and went with the couple to their room to keep drinking and chatting. They both showered her with compliments, saying how sexy she was and how lucky her husband was. The man then started touching her, while the wife encouraged both of them. They told her that no one would ever know, and that she should just enjoy the moment. She said it felt like she was no longer herself, but she ended up having sex with the husband while the wife watched. The next morning, she woke up in bed with both of them asleep beside her. She panicked and ran back to her room. One of her sisters caught her and listened as she confessed everything that happened. Her sister insisted that she tell me or she would. Sandy sobbed into the phone, begging for my forgiveness. But I was just numb, devastated at how easily she had thrown away our lives together. She was crying and kept saying how sorry she was, and that she hated herself for what she'd done. She said she loved me so much, and that she'd made a terrible mistake. But I told her that she hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a decision. I hung up on her and turned off my phone. I went home and just sat in a chair trying to figure out what would happen next. I curled up, grieving over the loss of the woman I once knew and the life we had shared. I cried over the loss of our future together and the effect her decision would have on our family. My life, as I knew it, was over. I shut myself off from the world for 2 days before finally turning my phone back on. As expected, I had hundreds of messages from her and her sisters. The last one said she was on her way home. My kids had also tried to reach out because their mother had been calling them, asking if they'd heard from me and if I was okay. I called my kids and told them what had happened, assuring them that I was as okay as I could be given the circumstances. I also let them know that I was leaving home to figure things out before Sandy returned and asked them not to tell her where I was headed. I needed to come to grips with the end of my marriage. I sent a text to my soon-to-be ex-wife, saying that we were getting a divorce and that I didn't want to hear from her anymore. I told her I didn't care about the details and didn't care about her either. The pain was excruciating. I would never have imagined that our love could have been destroyed so quickly. I sincerely doubt that this was her first time stepping out. You don't go from 33 years of faithfulness to a threesome after just one night of too many shots at a bar. She only confessed because she thought her sister-in-law had already ratted her out. Update: I've got a lot on my mind right now, so I might ramble a bit as my thoughts keep jumping around. A couple of clarifications. Our dead bedroom wasn't entirely dead, but compared to the last 2 years, it felt that way. The active job I had was in the military until an injury during a training exercise forced me into a desk job. That eventually led to my medical discharge. Afterward, my wife and I bought a small business together. Before I spoke to my wife, I had a long conversation with my sister-in-law and her husband. The story my wife initially confessed was very different from what she had told them. My kids were horrified by the whole thing and just want to support me. I explained that, even though they may be angry with their mother, she's still their mom and their kids' grandmother. She loves them, and what she did to our marriage doesn't change that. My wife and her sisters cut their holiday short and came home. I left a note for her telling her to pack up and stay at her mother's place. She did as asked, but the details of what actually went down were far worse than what my wife originally told me. Though she confessed under the threat of being exposed, she didn't tell me the full truth. No surprise there. Apparently, my wife broke down to her sister and spilled everything. According to her sister, my wife claims she loves me and cherishes our marriage and never expected to do this. She blamed our recently active sex life for making her wonder what she might be missing out on. She said she was always the attractive one in our relationship, but felt that our roles had reversed, leading to her insecurity and a desire to feel wanted by someone else. She swore that this was the first time she'd done anything like this, but she had planned it as a fantasy she wanted to act on. She said she just wanted to scratch an itch and had never intended to tell me. The couple she met weren't total strangers either. They were customers from out of state that she regularly spoke with on the phone. When she went for drinks, she went specifically to meet them, but her sisters tagged along, so they pretended to be strangers until her sisters left. They had planned this before the holiday even started, and although she did drink, she wasn't so drunk that she didn't know what she was doing. My wife is coming over this afternoon to talk, and she's beside herself over what will happen. I already know what I'm going to do. She chose to cheat, but we will all feel the consequences of her actions. Her feelings that she's lost me in our marriage are spot on, and I don't care how miserable she is because she did this to herself. No one forced her to lie. Now we all have to live with it. We are over, and we'll navigate our changed lives from here. I think my wife always looked down on me. It's clear to me from her belief that she was the attractive one. When she felt that sense of superiority slipping away in her mind, she had to find a way to get one over on me. She would have kept it a secret to maintain her feeling of superiority. Ultimately, I believe my wife doesn't respect me. She's probably got a history of trying to one-up me behind my back, just to satisfy her need to feel superior. Wow, that's a new low. Update: I had a conversation with my wife yesterday. After so many years together, neither of us sleeps well without the other by our side. But last night was the first night in decades that I slept soundly without her. When she came through the door, she looked terrible. Lack of sleep, guilt, fear, and red, swollen eyes. Normally, my heart would break and I'd try to comfort her. Not this time. I was sitting at the table as she walked in. She started crying, rushing over to hug me while mumbling apologies and how she messed up. I put my hand up, told her not to touch me, and asked her to sit down. She did. I offered her a coffee, which she accepted, so I made one and returned to the table. Her eyes never left me. She started to speak, but I cut her off and told her to stay quiet, answer my questions, and listen. This wasn't about her. This was about me and our marriage. I told her we were done. She had made her choice, and now it was my turn to make mine. My decision had already been made, but I wanted a semblance of truth from her. I thought that if she believed she still had a chance, she might be somewhat honest. I mentioned that I had spoken with her sister, which was true, and claimed to have spoken to the couple, which was false. But she didn't know that. Inside, I felt a strange mixture of happiness and sadness. Glad she was so upset, but sorrowful for what we'd lost. Anger, disappointment, and all the normal emotions coursed through me, yet I remained calm, and that freaked her out the most. Honestly, it felt like a job interview. I asked her how many times she'd been unfaithful. She said she had slept with the man once but had engaged in video chat twice. I asked her to explain how it all happened. She said it started with harmless business talk that turned into flirting, and when the wife got involved, she encouraged them both. Over the next couple of months, they all escalated to the point where the wife watched as my wife and the man had sex. She confessed that she had told them it had always been a fantasy of hers to have sex while the wife watched, and they were all for it. She was crying uncontrollably as she revealed all this to me, saying it went further than she had anticipated. She admitted she was fully aware of how dangerous it was, but that danger only heightened the thrill for her. She started to explain that she felt insecure, but before she could go any further, I cut her off and made it clear I didn't want to hear her hollow excuses and justifications. I waited a good 5 minutes until she could compose herself. I even got up and brought her tissues to wipe her tears away. She told me that they met as planned, and once her sisters had left the bar, they went straight to the couple's room. I asked her if she ever intended to come clean and tell me, and she admitted that she never planned to reveal it, that it was just a fantasy she wanted to fulfill so she could check it off her list and not have to think about cheating again. I called BS on that and asked if she'd cheated at all in the past 33 years of our marriage. She swore she hadn't, not once. I told her that at this point it didn't matter whether she cheated once or 1,000 times. The result would be the same. If she was lying, the only ones she would truly hurt were our kids and her relationship with them and our grandchildren. I told her that, frankly, I didn't believe her anymore, but it no longer mattered. She realized in that moment that I had no intention of working through her infidelity. She pleaded with me to work on our marriage, swearing she would do absolutely anything, even allowing me to have affairs if that meant I would stay. She promised she would never cheat again and that she would do whatever I asked. I told her to listen to herself and how she had degraded herself enough. I would never cheat while in a marriage, and if I did sleep with another woman, it would only happen after we were separated, with no possibility of reconciliation. And honestly, that's the last thing on my mind. She reached out, trying to grab my hand, but I pulled away and made it clear that I would never touch her again. I'm not judgmental of anyone's lifestyle. I understand that people have affairs, open marriages and so forth, but the point is that we didn't. The trust and respect were shattered the moment she planned to be with another man. I've always been a pragmatic man, and I just felt a wave of relief wash over me. I told her that we'd make this as easy on ourselves as possible. She mistook this as a glimmer of hope for our relationship, but I reiterated that we were done, and I meant it when I said I would never touch her again. I could never forget that she had planned and had sex with another man, and the woman I once loved and married was now dead to me. She died the moment she meticulously arranged to be with another man. The good memories we have together, our holidays, building our first home, raising our children, and all the laughter we've shared, will always remain just that, memories. Now we are destined to lead separate lives, and I, for one, am genuinely looking forward to seeing what new experiences await me. Those experiences will not include her. When I meet another woman, I hope to start new memories with her and in time find love again. She was shaking and sobbing uncontrollably when I told her all this, but it didn't faze me one bit. I just wanted her out of my house. She couldn't continue with the conversation, so I went down to the shed and called my kids to let them know what was happening while she gathered herself. They were incredibly supportive and advised me not to prolong this any further and just finish it for good. I went back upstairs, and as soon as I walked through the door, she started up again, insisting that we could make this work. I sat down and said, "We're going to sell the house and the business and split everything 50-50ths. You can have the car, and I'll take the truck and my motorcycle. You can also take the cats." I told her not to call, text, or contact me in any way unless it was about the kids or the grandkids. I'd contact the lawyers and start the divorce proceedings, and she was now free to go screw anyone she wanted because she was a free woman. She responded by saying that she didn't want to be with anyone else and accused me of being deliberately cruel and unemotional. I told her I was being honest and that her actions had left me in an emotional void. I also made it clear that she was the one responsible for the destruction of our marriage. No one else was to blame. I had loved her unconditionally, but she was the one who had ruined it all. I then left the house so she could sort herself out and pack up a few more things. I went over to my daughter's house and spent a few hours there, talking with her and playing with my granddaughter. When I got back home, she'd left, and that night, I had the best sleep I've ever had without her around. Now, I just have to see what happens over the next 6 months or so. She was upset that I wasn't emotional because her plan was to manipulate me with emotions. This wasn't a mistake, an accident, or a response to my behavior. It was an intentional decision to put our marriage at risk to fulfill her desires. I'm very skeptical that the one and only time she physically cheated, she was caught by her own admission. She had never intended to tell me, so she was clearly planning to keep the door open for future affairs. I'm absolutely doing the right thing, and she can talk to my lawyer. I don't need to have much contact with her because our kids are adults now. I intend to record all interactions with her if I can because, eventually, she'll start making things up to paint me as the villain. I'm not wrong. She's entirely to blame. I think she could have spoken to me about her fantasies. Maybe it would have opened up new doors for us to explore our relationship and intimacy. I'm not saying we would involve other couples, but the willingness to share our fantasies could have brought us closer together. I'm so sorry she steamrolled our life together. Update. It's been 5 weeks since my wife threw away our marriage. I've had a lot of time to reflect on my decision and still believe I made the right one. I could never trust her again, and I could never touch her again. It makes me sick just to think about it. It was her choice to cheat and destroy our marriage because she thought she could get away with it. She's still staying with her mother while I've been getting the house ready to sell. We've been in this house for 20 years, so there was a lot of junk that needed clearing out, but I did it, and we put it on the market. There are a couple of eager buyers, so I'm hopeful the house will be sold in the next week or two. Thankfully, the business has already been sold. One of our clients wanted to expand, and I accepted their offer last week. Settlement will happen in about a month. You always hear about divorce being a hassle, but it's a real pain where I live. You must be separated for 12 months and 1 day before you can even file for divorce. And then it takes another 4 months to finalize it, provided everything goes smoothly. I don't plan to leave any joint possessions unsettled, and as long as she continues to sign the sales contracts, it will make my life a lot easier as I move forward. Her way of thinking is different, though. My son has only spoken to her once, and apparently it was not a pleasant conversation. To be clear, my children are adults with kids of their own. I told my son that it would take time, but she's still his mother, and she was a good one. He shouldn't let her decision destroy his relationship with her. My daughter, on the other hand, has been in communication with her mother throughout. She's ashamed of her mother's actions, but is supporting her through the breakup. My daughter is honest and straightforward, and is making sure her mother understands the full repercussions of her behavior. My soon-to-be ex-wife, however, is delusional enough to believe that I'll forgive her and move on. She thinks all the years we spent together will be enough to sway me. When she came over to sign the real estate contract, she told me that I would change my mind because I still loved her and that she would be a better wife when I did. She believed we'd still grow old together and live a wonderful life, and this was just a speed bump in our marriage that we'd both get over. I was stunned. I looked at her and said she was completely nuts to think any of that. She had lied and cheated in the worst way, being intimate with another man while his wife watched. How could she think I'd ever want to touch her again? She said she knew she shouldn't have gone through with it and didn't know what she was thinking, and that it wasn't even that good. I told her to shut up because I didn't want to hear if she enjoyed it or not. The point is, she did it. I told her we have zero chance of reconciliation, and I want nothing to do with her. I'm looking forward to getting on with my life without her. I think she's in massive denial about what's happening, and that she no longer has any control over my actions or any right to. Her scheming and cheating destroyed a loving marriage, and she knew that when she did it. She can't be so naive as to think it's not happening because it is. Funny enough, I've been getting a fair amount of attention from other women now. I'm not interested in any relationships at this time, but it's nice to know that when I am, I'll have options. The soon-to-be ex-wife even got upset that other women we know have been over to visit, bring me dinner, and chat. She told me I should get it out of my system and that she'd be waiting. But there's no chance of that. I mean, seriously, how messed up is she? The only thing I want to get out of my system is her. Emotions are still running high: hate, anger, disgust. the feeling of loss, betrayal, and sadness. But I'm a strong man, and I'll deal with them. My goal now is to focus on getting rid of any financial entanglement with my wife and move on with my life. Final update. Anyway, 3 months down the line, I've moved things along pretty quickly. The business was sold, the house was sold, and we're legally separated, just waiting for the divorce waiting period to pass. For all intents and purposes, I've separated all our joint assets and am starting down the road of my new life. I would never have believed that I'd be where I am today, just 3 months ago. Back then, I had the life I wanted, a loving wife, my own business, a great family and friends, and a nice home. I was looking forward to spending the rest of my life with my wife. But my soon-to-be ex-wife ruined it all for herself and our family by lying, cheating, and being disloyal. Sure, we had our problems like any long-term couple, but we always stayed true to each other. When she got caught, it completely destroyed me. The loss of our lives together was devastating, and I couldn't understand why she did this. But this is where my life changed. It wasn't what I wanted, but my cheating wife decided it for me. I'm a pragmatic man who's always valued family, and that's helped make the transition easier. I've decided not to let my feelings drag me into a pit of self-pity and refuse to play the victim because it gets you nowhere. With the sale of our family home and the business, and after splitting everything equally with my soon-to-be ex-wife, I had enough to buy 2 small units near my grandchildren. My son and daughter live in different states with their partners and kids, and I chose this setup because I wanted my own space, but wanted to be close enough to visit them. I'm still working, as a previous business competitor offered me a part-time role that I took up. It gives me a lot of free time to start enjoying life again. There were a couple of weeks when I didn't have anything to do, so I jumped on my bike and just went riding, no specific destination in mind. I stopped for coffee and sightseeing, and in the evenings, I'd visit pubs and enjoy a couple of drinks before heading off the next day. What surprised me most was the casual relationship scene with women, and I have to admit, I'm liking it. I hooked up with a couple of women during those 2 weeks with no expectations, just sex and fun without any emotional baggage. I'm genuinely surprised at how well I'm feeling. A few people have asked if I ever contacted the couple my wife cheated with. No, I see no reason to, nor do I have any desire to. It was my soon-to-be ex-wife's decision to cheat on me, not theirs. I want no contact with them. They mean nothing to me. Honestly, the best revenge against a cheating partner is to show complete apathy and just get on with your life. Sure, the thoughts linger, but life goes on and it's best to focus on yourself. My soon-to-be ex-wife is apparently still deluded and thinks that once I calm down and miss her enough, I'll take her back. I've made it clear to her that our marriage is over, with no chance of reconciliation. I also told her I no longer care what she does or who she does it with. It has nothing to do with me anymore, just like what I do is no longer her business. My daughter told me her mother is still in denial and is very sad and embarrassed about what she did. She even wants my daughter to convince me to take her back. I told my daughter that will never happen because her mother is only sad and embarrassed because she got caught and because I followed through and left her. Life is certainly different from what I expected, but now I'm really looking forward to the future. As awful as everything was, it's nice to see the light ahead. I agree that the best revenge is focusing on yourself and becoming the best version of you. My ex-wife will always be stuck in the past, and that's on her. Do you have a similar story? Share it with me below.